All right, if you're a landlord in California, you're going to want to listen up. Starting in 2025, the game is changing when it comes to security deposits. And I'm not talking about little tweaks here and there. These are some major shifts in how you have to operate. So let's get right into what you absolutely need to know to stay on the right side of the law. So let's just cut to the chase with this question. Is it possible that your current process, the one that's totally legal right now, could actually be illegal come 2025? For a lot of landlords, the answer is going to be a surprising yes. These new laws are all about following the right steps. And trust me, getting the process wrong could end up costing you big time. First things first, let's follow the money. How you collect rent is now going to completely dictate how you have to return that security deposit. That flexibility you used to have, yeah, that's pretty much gone. And this slide right here lays it out perfectly. In the old days, it was your call, right? You could hand deliver it, mail a check, whatever worked. But now, if your tenant paid rent electronically, think Zelle, Venmo, any of those platforms, the law says you must return their deposit the same way. The default just totally flips on its head. So this new process, it has a few key steps you've got to follow. First, you need to actually keep track of how you got paid. Second, and this is a new one, you have to tell your tenant in writing that they have a right to get their money back electronically. And third, you just do it. You send the e-return. And here's the crucial point. Let's say you still want to cut a paper check even though your tenant always paid you through an app. Can you do it? Sure, but, and it's a big but, only if you and the tenant both sign a separate written agreement that says it's okay. Without that specific piece of paper, you have to go electronic. Period. Okay, next up, let's talk about the new rules for paperwork. Because these changes aren't just about how the money moves. They're also about the agreements, the consents, and the notices behind it all, especially when you're dealing with roommates or just using email. Dealing with roommates just got a lot more formal. The new default procedure is this. You write one single check made out to everybody on the lease, and you send that itemized list of deductions to just one of them. Now, if you want to do it differently, say split the deposit or send statements to everyone, you absolutely need a written agreement signed by all the tenants right from the very beginning. So what about something as simple as email? A lot of us have been using it for years to send statements. Well, you still can, but it's not a casual thing anymore. You now need to have clear, mutual, written consent from your tenant. So don't just assume it's okay. You have to get that permission down in writing. All right, now for what is probably the single biggest change in this whole new law. We're talking about how you prove your deductions. The days of just writing down repair hole in wall on a statement are officially over. Photos are not just a good idea anymore. They're mandatory. Let's start with move-in. For any new lease that begins on or after July 1st, 2025, you are legally required to take photos that document the condition of the unit before the tenant moves in. This has moved from the best practices column straight into the legal requirement column. And at move-out, the rule gets even more specific. Starting April 1st, 2025, you have to take pictures before you fix or clean anything that you plan to deduct for. Then you have to take pictures again after the work is all done. And here's the kicker. You must give copies of all of those photos to the tenant right along with their itemized statement. Now, what I love about this slide is how it brings it all together. Just look at that required proof column. It doesn't matter if you hire a pro, do the work yourself, or just do some cleaning. You need the paperwork, the invoices, the detailed descriptions, the hourly rates, and you need the photos to back it all up. That photo evidence is the new universal rule for everything. Now, there is one tiny exception to all this paperwork. If the total amount you're deducting is $125 or less, you don't have to provide all this documentation automatically. But, and be careful here, if the tenant asks for it, you still have to hand it all over. So what happens if you slip up, if you miss one of these new steps? Well, the stakes are pretty high, and the penalties for messing this stuff up are still really significant. Yeah. If a court decides you failed to follow the rules in bad faith, which could be something as simple as not returning the deposit in time or taking deductions you can't prove, the penalty can be up to twice the amount of the security deposit, on top of having to return the original deposit too. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. It's not just about trying to cheat a tenant anymore. With so many new specific rules, like needing written consent for email or taking before and after photos, the chances of making a simple, honest mistake have just shot way up. And even a small technical slip-up can turn into a very expensive problem. Okay, so with all this change flying around, I think it's important to take a quick breath and just cover what isn't changing, just to keep things in perspective. So, the bedrock rules are still in place. You've still got that 21-day deadline to return the deposit. The reasons you're allowed to make deductions, unpaid rent, damages beyond normal wear and tear, those are the same. And the caps on how much you can even charge for a deposit, those haven't changed with this new law either. Okay, let's bring it all home and focus on the bottom line. What are the absolute must-know takeaways for California landlords from all of this? Here it is in a nutshell. First, you've got way less flexibility in how you return money. Second, you need a lot more formal structure and written agreements for roommate situations. Third, you have a huge new responsibility to provide photo evidence for your deductions. And fourth, because of all that, your financial risk goes up if you miss any of these new procedural steps. And all of this leads to a final, pretty big question. When you think about mandatory e-returns, required photo documentation, and getting formal written consent for basic communication, are we really seeing the end of the informal handshake style of landlording in California? It really seems like the future is all about process, paperwork, and proof.